Hey everyone, this is Corner once again, and today I wanted to talk about some of the games that I'm looking forward to this 2020. 2020 is an awesome year for video games because there's just so many games coming out as of this year. Whether they be prequels and sequels of existing games, remakes of existing games from previous generations, or completely new IPs, there's just so many games coming out as of this year. And not only that, we also have the next generation of consoles to look forward to this 2020. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about some of the games that I'm looking forward to as of this year. Now, some of these games are going to be releasing definitively as of this year. Some of them, we still don't know the exact release date as of current. So in today's video, I'm going to be going through some of the games that I'm looking forward to as of 2020. Now, before I go ahead and get started, I wanted to thank everyone who subscribed to the channel as well as watched and liked all of the videos. Honestly, I'm really glad that a lot of people are enjoying the content on this particular channel. I didn't necessarily think that I would be doing something like this with this particular channel in any way, shape, or form. In fact, the 150 subscribers that we have in this channel as of right now, I want to say thanks to all of you for subscribing to the channel and keeping up with me in regards to some of the contents that I do. Mostly they're Monster Hunter contents, and in today's video, I wanted to give you something a little bit different. So honestly, I want to say thanks again to all of the subscribers in the channel as of today. Now then, let's go ahead and go through some of the video games that I'm looking forward to as of this 2020. Now, the first game that I'm actually looking forward to for this year is none other than Nioh 2, which is set to come out on March as of this year. Now, Nioh 2 is going to be an amazing game. It's a prequel to the original Nioh game, and where Nioh itself did not have character customization, Nioh 2 does, which is really awesome. And as of recent, PlayStation actually posted some of the changes that they're going to be making to Nioh 2 due to the feedback that they got from the original Nioh 2 demo. Now, I personally played the demo of Nioh 2 itself, and honestly, I've enjoyed some of the things that they have coming up for Nioh 2 itself. Now, they did maintain a lot of the elements from the original Nioh game in Nioh 2 itself, which is really awesome because for those of us who played the original Nioh game, we already know how awesome this game is, and a lot of the elements of that particular game was pretty good. And in Nioh 2, they've adjusted some of these elements and even made sure that they've done some improvements based on the feedback from the Nioh 2 demo itself. Now, personally, I can't wait for this game because they also have some new weapon types coming up, especially when it comes to the Switchblade. I really want to see how that weapon will come out when it comes to the full release of the game itself. Now, when it comes to Nioh 2, the most I'm looking forward to is the character customization as well as the transformation gimmick that they have for Nioh 2. Basically, it acts in the same way as a Devil Trigger in the Devil May Cry series, but the difference is rather than actually basically turning into a demon, you're rather instead possessed by a demon, and you can have different yokai abilities or demon abilities depending on some of the yokai spirits that you gain by defeating certain yokais. And when I played the original Nioh 2 demo, that was really fun to do. Honestly, I cannot wait to see what they have in store for us for Nioh 2 once it comes out on March of this year. Now, the next game that I'm actually looking forward to for this year doesn't actually have a release date for this year as of yet. I don't think it's actually coming out this year. Well, I don't know actually. They may release it this year, they may not. Well, either way, the next game I'm looking forward to, whether they release it this year or not, is Granblue Fantasy Relink. Now, I personally am not familiar with the Granblue Fantasy series, but when I saw the gameplay video that someone posted on YouTube of this particular game, this game got me hooked. I love the action sequences. It's very anime as you would expect with the Granblue Fantasy series, and with my limited knowledge of the Granblue Fantasy series, this is one of those games that will have multiple characters that you can choose from in order to go through adventures. Now, I'm not quite sure whether or not this game will have character customization. Again, I'm not familiar with the Granblue Fantasy series in and of itself, but I'm hoping that there is, just because of the fact that obviously it's great to have multiple character choices, but it would also be nice to have a character that you can customize to your own liking. When it comes to these kinds of action RPG games, honestly, I do love what they are doing with Granblue Fantasy as of right now with Granblue Fantasy Relink. And for the most part, I wouldn't be disappointed if there was no character customization, but it would be a big plus when it comes to this particular game. Honestly, the action, the graphics, everything like that, the particle effects that they have going on, it was really awesome to see in real time when someone was playing the demo of this for the Japanese version of the game. I cannot wait to see when this game will come out. I'm really hoping it comes out this year because it does look like an awesome game, and it would be awesome to have it in the PS4 for current generation consoles rather than having it come out as a next generation console game. I mean, I wouldn't mind that personally, but I would prefer if they have a current generation console version of this game first, just so we can actually have fun with it before anyone decides to maybe buy the next generation console and have this game again. Honestly, it looks awesome, but there's no release date for it as of yet. We don't even know if they're releasing in 2020 or if they're releasing it for the current generation consoles, but again, I'm still excited for it regardless. Now, the next game I'm looking forward to this 2020 is Ghost of Tsushima. Now, this game has had an amazing development cycle. In fact, some of the stuff that I've seen with Ghost of Tsushima look really awesome, especially when it comes to the trailer, some of the gameplay aspects of this particular game. And honestly, I can't wait to see what they have in store for us for this particular game. Some of the development kind of posts that they did on Twitter, I believe it was done by Sucker Punch. I can't remember the exact company's name. I believe it is Sucker Punch who developed this game. Some of the elements that they've shown where they were working with actual real-life samurais, working on some of the motion captures, all of that kind of stuff, just so the game developers have an idea as to what kind of techniques modern-day samurais use as well as historic Japanese samurais would use, was really awesome to see, and I can't wait to see how that is going to be portrayed in the game itself. Honestly, some of the cinematics of this game look so mind-blowing. I cannot wait to experience them once it comes out this year. And being a stealth-based action game does mean it has the elements similar to that of Assassin's Creed, where you have to basically stealthily kill your enemies, or you can have one of those action-based games where you basically confront a lot of your enemies and just fight them head on. Now, I do believe this is going to be one of those open world based games, meaning that you can take whatever path that you do regardless of the situation that you're in. So it will have a basic storyline, but for the most part it will have side quests, all of that kind of stuff that basically kicks into other stories being developed as you go through your adventure in Ghost of Tsushima. So honestly, I can't wait for this game. It really looks amazing in terms of cinematics and the action sequences that they've shown for the trailers, and for the most part, it really has me hyped up. Now, if there is one thing that I've noticed when it comes to the trailers, especially when it comes to the gameplay elements of this particular game, they don't really show the user interface. Now, I don't necessarily know what that means, but it could mean that there is a potential case scenario where we could play it as a purely cinematic experience where there's no user interface or anything like that, and we just play it purely as if it were a cinematic game. Honestly, that would be really awesome to experience when Ghost of Tsushima comes out this year. Now, another game that I'm looking forward to as of this year, but doesn't necessarily have a release date as of yet, so I don't know if it's coming out this year, is Breath of the Wilds 2. Now, Breath of the Wilds 2 was announced last year, but there hasn't been any release dates announced for this particular game, and I'm personally hoping it comes out at some point this 2020. I really want to see what Nintendo themselves have done to change the overall gameplay experience in Breath of the Wilds 2 that they couldn't do in the original Breath of the Wilds game. Breath of the Wilds was very experimental in my personal opinion when it comes to the overall gameplay elements of it, because it did change a lot of what we know from traditional Zelda games, and I would say it's a big risk by Nintendo themselves in my personal opinion, because we already know a lot of the formulas that we would normally expect when it comes to a Legend of Zelda game, and Breath of the Wilds kind of went beyond that. And honestly, that was a great experience for me. It does feel refreshing, especially when you can go ahead and just confront the enemy, the final boss head on without any preparations or anything like that. That was a really fun experience for me. Honestly, I would love to see what they have in store for us with Breath of the Wilds 2. Again, there's no release date for this, but I am excited for it regardless. Now, if there's one thing that I'm really looking forward to in Breath of the Wilds 2, it's the portrayal of Ganondorf, one of my all-time favorite villains, and my favorite main character in Smash Bros, by the way. But honestly, I want to see how they portray Ganondorf in Breath of the Wilds 2. There's a lot of fan arts out there as of right now showing him as this really friendly kind of like general or something like that goes around the catacombs with Link and Zelda and just having fun and all of that kind of stuff. And I would love to see a different portrayal of Ganondorf himself. Now, in a lot of the games that we know where Ganondorf is in, he's evil, he's manipulative, he's basically one of those people that want power for himself to rule over all of Hyrule. But if there is going to be some form of change in Breath of the Wild 2 in terms of character portrayal, I would love to see Ganondorf's character portrayal change. Basically make him something, I don't know, something along the lines of a person who's trying to escape his overall fate of being the cursed enemy of the hero and the goddess. Because let's be honest, that's what the main kind of scenario is in Skyward Sword. The reason that Ganondorf is always the evil person is because Demise created that curse that causes Ganondorf to always become the villain. And in Breath of the Wild 2, I would love to see them try to basically break that kind of cycle, potentially by making Ganondorf like a good guy, but he's being forced to do evil things. Honestly, I would love to see that. And overall, I can't wait for Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 just because of the fact that it's a Breath of the Wild game. What kind of element in terms of the gameplay they would change would be really awesome to know. And with no release date as of yet, I'm really hoping it does come out at some point this year. If not, I'm still excited for it regardless. Now, next up on my list of games that I'm looking forward to this 2020 is none other than the Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition game. Now, I personally never played the original Xenoblade Chronicles game, but on my friend's suggestion, I did watch the cutscenes, and honestly, with 10 hours worth of cutscenes, Xenoblade Chronicles is one of those games that you don't necessarily have to play, at least from my personal opinion, in order to get into the actual series itself in terms of story and characters. Honestly, just watching the cutscenes in and of themselves really felt awesome because it felt like watching an anime series. Honestly, that's how much I enjoyed it. I binged watched every single cutscene of Xenoblade Chronicles from start to finish, and honestly, I enjoyed it. That's how much Xenoblade Chronicles has impacted me in terms of its story and character. I didn't necessarily play the game itself, but watching the cutscenes got me really hooked into the game. And with Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, I get to play the actual game itself because I am going to be getting that game. And this time, it's going to be a completely new experience for me. It's not just going to be me watching the cutscenes now. I'm also going to be experiencing the gameplay of Xenoblade Chronicles. Now, being one of the first Xenoblade Chronicles games, I'm not quite sure if there's going to be a huge difference between the gameplay of Xenoblade Chronicles X, and Xenoblade Chronicles 2, because I have played X and Xenoblade Chronicles 2, just not the original game. And there has been some changes between Xenoblade Chronicles X and Xenoblade Chronicles 2 in terms of its overall gameplay and elements, but I'm not quite sure how Xenoblade Chronicles will play for me personally because I've never played the original game. So honestly, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is going to be a completely new experience for me because I've never played the original game. I have watched the cutscenes themselves, but again, the gameplay aspect of it is going to be a completely new experience for me. Now, being a definitive edition of Xenoblade Chronicles, it begs the question whether or not there might be some changes in terms of its overall storyline script from the original game. So will there be alterations to some of the storyline elements, even the gameplay elements from the original game or anything like that? Now, the reason I ask this is because obviously with Xenoblade Chronicles 2, there has been that link between the original game and Xenoblade Chronicles 2, especially when it comes to Klaus, Zanza, Aenith, and Galea, all of that kind of stuff. And would that be something that Monolith Soft will add into the definitive edition of Xenoblade Chronicles? That remains to be seen, but honestly it would be interesting to see whether or not they will alter some of the script in Xenoblade Chronicles in order to fit in some of the stuff that we learned in Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I can't wait to see that. Now, the next game I'm looking forward to this particular year is none other than Resident Evil 3 Remake. This is one of those games that Capcom themselves announced spontaneously. No one even expected that a Resident Evil 3 Remake was happening. Now, some may have had some guesses for it, but for the most part, it remained spontaneous and out of the blue when Capcom announced Resident Evil 3 Remake was happening, because a lot of the focus that Capcom was doing was on Project Resistance. So we had the Resident Evil 2 Remake pretty much out at that point, and then Capcom focused solely on giving us information regarding the Resident Evil Project Resistance game. Honestly, that was the main focus. And the fact that Capcom kept ourselves focused on Project Resistance was such an awesome move, because we didn't expect out of the blue to have a Resident Evil 3 remake that got us really hyped up when it was finally announced. Honestly, kudos to Capcom for getting us hyped up for a game we didn't even know was going to be coming out this year. Definitely a great job by Capcom themselves. And if we're going to be looking into this game in the same vein as we saw the original game, where it's more action-oriented than something like Resident Evil 2, then we are going to be looking at some gameplay element changes from Resident Evil 2 Remake in Resident Evil 3 Remake. So honestly, that's definitely something that's going to be coming up with this particular game. I mean, there's already developer diaries of some sort where Capcom themselves pretty much stated that it is a little bit more action-oriented than Resident Evil 2. That's why some of the changes on Jill herself were made in terms of her overall character design. So overall, it is going to be a little bit of a different experience from Resident Evil 2 Remake if we're looking at it as a horror action-based game. And honestly, I can't wait to see how brutal Nemesis is going to be in this game. I mean, in the original Resident Evil 3 game, he was relentless at trying to chase you down. Honestly, one moment you think you're safe, all of a sudden he's right behind you. He's one of those really relentless kind of creatures that just chases you down in many different ways, and it has many different ways of trying to find you. Nemesis is relentless. And in certain case scenario, if Capcom are keeping it, there was also the whole live select mode or something like that, where you basically get this white screen and then you have to choose which actions you have to take based on that moment within a limited amount of time. And that usually determines how good or bad your situation is going to be. Sometimes it comes up when Nemesis is around you and you're thinking, do you hide from Nemesis, or do you run away from Nemesis, or do you confront Nemesis? And depending on the choices that you make, it could be a very good situation for you or a very bad one. I mean, sometimes you can hide away from Nemesis, but then he finds you anyway, and sometimes you confront him and then he kills you. Honestly, it's just one of those situations, and I can't wait to see that in the Resident Evil 3 Remake, because that's gonna change how the gameplay is like in comparison to Resident Evil 2 Remake. Honestly, I can't wait to see what Capcom has in store for us when it comes to the Resident Evil 3 Remake alongside Project Resistance, which is coming out in tandem with Resident Evil 3 Remake. I believe they're doing it as one big package. Now, the last game I'm going to be putting on this list is a game that should be on everyone's radar, especially if you're a Square Enix fan and a Final Fantasy fan, and that is none other than Final Fantasy VII Remake. Honestly, what I've seen of the trailers as well as the gameplay for this particular remake, it is just gorgeous. Honestly, I love Final Fantasy VII Remake. The amount of times I've seen the trailers, the amount of times I've seen the demos that's been posted online, honestly, I can't wait for this to come out this year. Now, I did manage to get a glimpse of the demo itself as well as the gameplay overall during one of the events in London, which was MCM Comic Con, and honestly, it was so beautiful that I just couldn't stay away from that area where they were doing the Final Fantasy demo. I just kept watching people play it after I've experienced it myself, and honestly, I can't wait for this game to come out this year. Now, if there's one thing I'm a little bit iffy about, it's the details regarding episodic release. I'm not quite sure how Square Enix is going to go through that as of yet, but honestly, regardless of the situation, it does look like a beautiful game, and I cannot wait for it to release this year. The combat is so smooth, it's so much better than what we had from the original game. I know the original game has had its glory days because it was a turn-based game, and it wasn't necessarily one of those high-end graphics game, but honestly, back in the days, those were so awesome. And now that we're getting a remake of Final Fantasy VII, it's going to be even more awesome once it launches this 2020. Honestly, Final Fantasy VII is one of those Final Fantasy games that I've gone through from start to finish, because I've gone through the whole compilation of Final Fantasy VII, and I went through all of the stuff like Crisis Core, Before Crisis, I went through all of the Advent Children movies, standard version and the complete version, and I went through Dirge of Cerberus as well. Honestly, Final Fantasy VII is just one of those games that I completely love from start to finish, and the fact that I went through all of the other stuff, the supplementary stuff for this particular game, really shows how much Final Fantasy VII had an impact on me. Honestly, I can't wait for this game to come out this year. Again, I'm a little bit iffy on the details of the episodic releases. I'm not quite sure what Square Enix has planned for that, but I'm really hoping it's not one of those case scenarios where they take forever to release one episode. But otherwise, I'm excited for this. I can't wait for Final Fantasy VII to come out this year. That is pretty much it for this video. As you can see, there's a good amount of games coming out this year, and in this particular list, I've only listed down the games that I'm highly anticipating for this year. There are still some other games out there that's going to be coming out this year that we don't necessarily have a lot of information on, such as Elden Ring, for example, and that's another game that I'm excited for, but there's not enough information on it to really get me hyped up at this current moment because Bandai Namco are withholding information on Elden Ring at this current moment. But overall, there's a great amount of games coming out for this year, and these are just some of the games that I'm highly anticipating for this year. There are still some other games out there coming out this 2020. Tell us in the comments below what games you're looking forward to this 2020, because there's loads of them, and I'm more than sure that alongside the games that I've listed down, there are going to be some games that people are looking forward to this 2020 that I've not listed down on this particular video. So go ahead, feel free to share your particular games that you're looking forward to this 2020. Now that is pretty much it for me for this video. If you enjoyed these videos, please feel free to leave a like on the video itself, as well as subscribe to the channel so you can go ahead and catch up on any games that I might be playing in future. Until then, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Onward and upward.